When morning came, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you've done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" We read that in Genesis chapter 29 and verse 25. In this reading of Genesis, the family soap opera continues. We see more deception, more tangles, more family rivalry. And for the first time, we meet someone who can out-trick the trickster, Jacob. Uncle Laban seems to be a more cunning schemer than Jacob. The chapter begins with another love story at the side of a well. Jacob sees Rachel at the well and decides she's the one for him. Now, whether it's really first love at first sight, it's hard to tell, but Jacob does make quite a scene with seeing Rachel for that first time and the sheep of Laban as well. In this story, is it less about romantic love and more about a business transaction between these two men? The sisters do seem to be kind of bargaining chips passed from one household to the other with no power to choose. As our text opens, Jacob is making a deal with Rachel's father, his uncle Laban. Jacob will work 7 years with his uncle in order to marry Rachel, his beloved. And at the end of those 7 years, it's Laban who hosts a wedding feast, but ends up substituting his older daughter Leah for Rachel. He's tricking the trickster. We might wonder how Laban managed this deceitful power play. How did Jacob not know? Or did he actually know? And he and Laban playing some kind of elaborate game together. For centuries, rabbis and readers have asked similar types of questions, but either way, Jacob wakes up in the morning claiming that Laban has treated him unfairly, and we as readers have to agree. When Laban tries to explain to Jacob, he says, "This is not done in our country, giving the younger before the firstborn." And we cannot help but hear the irony in that, for the pattern of the story so far has shown that God's covenant is with the younger sibling first. God's ways seem to counter the way of the current culture. And Laban, being a man of that culture, finds a way to stick with convention. And in the end, Jacob accepts what has happened and works another 7 years for Rachel. Sadly, the transaction between Laban and Jacob set up a rivalry between the two sisters. Jacob has clearly preferred Rachel all along, and Leah feels unloved. Rachel is jealous because Leah bears Jacob children before Rachel does. As their ancestor-in-law Sarah, and others of the culture to be sure, did before them, the sisters volunteer their servant maids to bear children on their behalf, struggling for power and favor in the only way that was available to women at the time. And Leah, she gloats. Rachel herself remains unbarren. And once again, we see dysfunction and rivalry pass from one generation to the next. But once again, we see God at work in spite of the human brokenness. As we look at the whole Jacob, Leah, Rachel saga, we recognize God's compassion and goodness. God sees Leah's sadness, and God sees that Rachel is barren. Both of them bear children, and the tribe of Jacob, it multiplies. And from this family soap opera come the 12 tribes of Israel, and the promise of God continues. God's faithfulness to the covenant that was made to Abraham has not changed, but it is continuing even to this day and to this age. This is good news, and thanks be to God's faithfulness. Amen.